If you have ever bought a diamond, you were taught three things about it: that it is rare, that it lasts forever, and that the correct amount to spend is about 2 months of your salary. All three of those beliefs are true in the sense that almost everyone holds them. None of the three is true in the sense that they describe the actual mineral. Diamonds are not especially rare, and the 2-month rule was a line written by an advertising agency. So where did those beliefs come from? If a diamond is not naturally rare, why does it cost what a rare thing costs? And how does a single company manufacture a feeling, a sense of permanence, of obligation, of romance, and then charge the entire world to buy it back? This is one of the most complete case studies in all of business of a company that did not discover a market. It built one in the mind from almost nothing. This is Market Cap Stories. Today, how De Beers invented scarcity. Let's begin with the inconvenient fact at the center of this entire story. A diamond is crystallized carbon. It forms deep in the earth under heat and pressure, and it is brought toward the surface by ancient volcanic activity. For most of human history, diamonds genuinely were rare, not because the mineral itself is scarce, but because almost nobody had found a large deposit. The known supply came from a few riverbeds, mostly in India and later Brazil, in small quantities. That scarcity was real, but it was an accident of geography, not a property of the mineral. And in 1867, the accident ended. An enormous diamond deposit was discovered in South Africa, and within a few years, more deposits, all of them vast. What followed should have been an economic disaster for anyone who owned diamonds. The South African mines did not produce a trickle of stones. They produced a flood, tons of diamonds, year after year. In basic economic terms, this is straightforward. When the supply of a good rises sharply and demand stays roughly flat, the price falls. If supply rises enough, the price can fall very close to the cost of simply digging the stuff up. A flood of diamonds should have made diamonds cheap. And here is the strategic crisis that this story is built on. The people who owned the South African mines now held an enormous quantity of something that was about to become nearly worthless. They were sitting on a mountain of a commodity whose price was collapsing under the weight of their own production. The only way to keep diamonds valuable was to make the world believe they were still scarce, while mining them by the ton. The man who solved that problem was Cecil Rhodes. In 1888, Rhodes consolidated the major South African diamond mines into a single company, De Beers Consolidated Mines. And the founding insight of De Beers was not about mining, it was about control. Rhodes understood something that the individual mine owners competing against each other could not afford to act on. As long as many separate companies each mined diamonds and each sold them, they would all keep flooding the market, and the price would keep falling, hurting every one of them. Each individual owner had an incentive to mine and sell as much as possible, but collectively, that behavior destroyed the value of what they all owned. The solution was to remove the competition entirely. If a single entity controlled essentially all of the world's diamond supply, then that entity could decide exactly how many diamonds reach the market in any given year. It could hold stones back in a warehouse. It could release them slowly. It could match supply precisely to whatever demand existed. and so hold the price wherever it wanted. This structure has a name. It is a cartel, or, in De Beers' own preferred and gentler term, a single channel for marketing diamonds. Over the following decades, De Beers built exactly that. It bought mines. Where it could not buy a mine, it made agreements with the owners to sell only through De Beers. When new diamond deposits were discovered elsewhere in the world, and they were repeatedly, De Beers' standard response was to bring that new supply inside the channel. It would offer the new producer a deal. Sell your diamonds through us at a price we both benefit from, rather than dumping them on the open market and destroying the price for everyone, yourself included. Notice how rational that offer is for the new producer. On the open market, dumping a large new supply crashes the price, and the new producer earns very little per stone. Inside the De Beers channel, the new producer accepts a quota, sells less, but sells it at a far higher, stabilized price. The cartel did not have to force most producers to join. It only had to show them the arithmetic. Scarcity, enforced collectively, was worth more to every single member than abundance sold competitively. Controlling supply, though, only solves half of the problem. You can hold back as many diamonds as you like, but if nobody particularly wants a diamond, a controlled supply of an unwanted thing is still worth very little. By the 1930s, De Beers faced precisely this. It had supply under control, but demand was weak. And worse, it was fragile. Here is why the demand was fragile. A diamond is extraordinarily durable. That is a real, genuine property of the stone. It does not wear out. It does not break under normal use. It does not decay. And from a seller's point of view, that durability is a serious problem, because a diamond that never wears out can be resold. Every diamond ever sold still exists. In principle, the world already contains an enormous second-hand supply of perfectly good diamonds, sitting in drawers, in jewelry boxes, in estates. A new car wears out, so people buy new cars. Food is consumed, so people buy more food. But a diamond is permanent. If diamonds were treated as an ordinary luxury good, something you buy, enjoy for a while, and then resell when you want the money back, then the second-hand market would compete directly with new mine production. Every diamond resold is a diamond De Beers did not get to sell. The durability of the stone was, commercially, a threat. So De Beers needed to solve two things at once, and they were linked. First, it needed to create strong, durable demand for new diamonds. Second, it needed that demand to be of a very particular kind, a kind that would discourage people from ever reselling the diamonds they bought. It needed a reason for diamonds to be purchased and a reason for them never to be sold again. And in 1938, it found one. In 1938, De Beers hired an American advertising agency called N.W. Ayer, and the campaign that came out of that relationship is by any measure one of the most effective pieces of demand engineering ever executed. The agency's central task was not to sell a product. It was to attach the diamond permanently to a single, specific, universal human event: the proposal of marriage. The strategy was to make the diamond engagement ring not a nice option, not a popular tradition, but an absolute necessity, a step without which a marriage proposal was simply incomplete. To do this, the campaign worked on several levels at once. It placed diamonds in films, on film stars, in the hands of glamorous, aspirational people. It sent lecturers into schools to speak to teenagers about engagement. It cultivated the press so that stories about celebrity engagements always mentioned the diamond, always mentioned its size. The goal was to make the diamond feel less like a purchase and more like a custom, something that had always been done, something everyone simply knew. And then, in 1947, a copywriter at the agency wrote 4 words that solved the entire problem at once. The line was, "A diamond is forever." Sit with how much work those 4 words do. A diamond is forever does 3 separate things simultaneously, and each one is commercially essential. First, it makes the diamond a symbol of permanent love. The stone lasts forever, therefore the marriage lasts forever. The product and the promise become the same thing. Second, and this is the part that solves the durability problem, a diamond is forever tells the buyer that this stone must never be sold. A diamond given as a token of eternal love cannot be resold without, in effect, reselling the love. To put your engagement diamond on the secondhand market would feel like a small betrayal. And so, the campaign quietly removed the threat we identified earlier. It took the world's enormous, permanent, resaleable stockpile of diamonds and made it socially frozen. Diamonds went into jewelry boxes, and emotionally, they never came back out. Third, and most subtly, the campaign linked the size and cost of the diamond to the depth of the commitment. If a small diamond symbolizes love, a larger diamond, the logic quietly suggests, symbolizes greater love. De Beers promoted directly the idea of a guideline for spending. First, the notion of 1 month's salary, and later, in some markets, 2 months' salary. There is no reason, none, that a token of love should cost 2 months' income rather than 2 days. The figure is not derived from anything. It was suggested, repeated, and absorbed until it felt like common knowledge. By the second half of the 20th century, De Beers had achieved something genuinely remarkable. It controlled the great majority of the world's rough diamond supply, and it had built, through decades of patient advertising, a near universal belief that a diamond was rare, eternal, and a necessary symbol of marriage. But a constructed belief is not self-maintaining. It has to be defended constantly against forces that would expose it. And over the decades, De Beers faced several such forces. Consider 3. The first threat was new supply from outside the cartel. Every time a major new deposit was found, in Russia, in Australia, in Canada, there was a risk the new producer would sell independently and break the price. De Beers' answer for most of the 20th century was the channel: absorb the new supply, offer the quota, keep the producer inside the system. It worked for a long time, though. As we will see, not forever. The second threat was the secondhand market, the one the advertising had frozen. As long as a diamond is forever held in people's minds, the freeze held. But the freeze was psychological, not physical. If the public ever began, in large numbers, to treat diamonds as ordinary resaleable assets, to shop secondhand, to resell freely, the frozen stockpile would thaw, and decades of new mine pricing would be undercut by the world's existing stones. The third threat is the most interesting, because it strikes at the very center of the story. It became possible to manufacture diamonds. Not imitations, not cheap, sparkly glass, but real diamonds. Actual crystallized carbon, physically and chemically identical to mined stones, grown in a laboratory. A laboratory-grown diamond and a mined diamond are, at the level of the material itself, the same thing. And this is a profound problem for a company whose entire price depends on the belief that the mined stone is special, rare, and irreplaceable. De Beers' response to lab-grown diamonds is itself a lesson in demand engineering. Rather than only fighting the new product, the company worked to reframe it. The argument it promoted was, in essence, this: a mined diamond carries something a manufactured one cannot: a history, a rarity, a romance of the earth. The lab-grown stone in this framing is positioned as a lesser thing, a fashion product, a cheaper substitute, precisely because it lacks the story. Notice what this means. When two products are physically identical, the only remaining thing you can sell is the story itself. De Beers had always been selling the story. The lab-grown diamond simply made that undeniable. Now, it would be wrong to end this story with De Beers still all-powerful. It is not. And the way its control eroded is as instructive as the way it was built. Over the final decades of the 20th century and into the 21st, several things worked against the cartel. Major producers increasingly chose to sell their diamonds independently, outside the De Beers channel. A large producer with its own mines and its own customers no longer needed De Beers to reach the market. The single channel slowly became one channel among several. There was also a legal dimension. A cartel that controls supply to fix a price is, in many jurisdictions, illegal. De Beers faced significant antitrust pressure, particularly in the United States, which was one of its largest markets. For years, the company's structure kept it at arm's length from direct legal exposure in that market. Over time, the legal environment, the rise of independent producers, and the company's own strategic choices pushed De Beers away from the old cartel model altogether. By the 21st century, De Beers had shifted its strategy. Instead of trying to hoard and control all the world's rough diamonds, it leaned harder on the other half of its old machine, the half it had always been better at than anyone. It leaned on the brand, on marketing, on the story. The company that had spent a century controlling supply increasingly accepted that it could not control supply forever, and fell back on the one asset no rival mine could dig out of the ground: the meaning of the diamond itself. So let's state plainly what this company actually did. De Beers is sometimes described as a mining company. It mined, certainly, but mining was never the source of its extraordinary value. Consider the two halves of the De Beers machine. One half was supply control, the cartel, the channel, the warehouse. That half was real and powerful, but it was also fragile. It depended on keeping rivals inside the system, and rivals eventually left. The other half was demand creation, the advertising, the engagement ring. A diamond is forever, the 2-month rule, the entire constructed cultural belief. And that half proved far more durable than the cartel itself. Think about what that tells you. The cartel, the part that controlled the physical mineral, eroded within a few decades of serious pressure. But the belief, the idea that you must buy a diamond to propose, that you must spend a certain fraction of your income, that the stone is rare and eternal, that belief is still, today, held by hundreds of millions of people. The physical monopoly was temporary. The monopoly on meaning outlasted it. De Beers' most valuable creation was never in any mine. It was in the wedding. So what is the durable lesson here? The part worth carrying into the next case. The lesson is not simply diamonds are overpriced. That is true, in a sense, but it is the shallow version. The deeper lesson is about where value actually comes from, and it is uncomfortable. We tend to assume that the price of a thing reflects some real physical scarcity, that an expensive thing is expensive because it is genuinely hard to obtain. The De Beers story shows that this assumption can be completely false. Scarcity itself can be manufactured through supply control, and demand itself can be manufactured through decades of patient, disciplined storytelling. So the transferable question is this. When you look at a high-priced product, any product, ask where the price is actually coming from. Is it coming from real, physical, unavoidable scarcity? Or is it coming from a story about rarity, about meaning, about necessity, that someone at some point deliberately built and has been carefully maintaining ever since? Because if it is the story, then what you are buying is not the thing. You are buying the belief. And the belief was for sale all along. A diamond is crystallized carbon. It is durable, and it is beautiful. And it is not, in any geological sense, rare. Everything else you believe about it, the permanence, the romance, the price, the obligation, was built deliberately by a company that needed you to believe it. In a market full of products sold on stories, the diamond is the purest example. A case where the story did not decorate the value. The story was the value. The most useful habit an investor or a buyer can build is to keep asking which is which. If this is the kind of strategic anatomy you find useful, subscribe to Market Cap Stories. We will see you in the next case.